Hey guys, it's Paul Brown with Watson Watch Company. I just wanted to take a minute to relay to you, I think, just the historic nature of the moment that we are in. Donald Trump should, and I believe he will, go down in history as one of the greatest presidents that the United States has ever seen. And here's why. Very simply, and there's many other things he has done, many other things he will do, but so far, very notably, he took out the Maduro administration in Venezuela, the successor to the Hugo Chavez administration that started in 1999. That's 27 years of socialist, anti-American, aligned with our enemies administration in Venezuela, one of the largest, most wealthiest nations in the Western Hemisphere. And in one night, Donald Trump, with Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and our Secretary of State Marco Rubio and our brave troops, took out Maduro, and we're changing the pace there. All right, that's 27 years. Right now, we're in the midst of overthrowing the Iranian regime, the Republic of Iran's regime, which has been an enemy of the United States for 47 years. Right, so we're looking at these long-standing, massive institutions. And while Iran is not located geographically in our hemisphere, in the Western Hemisphere, they have impacted the United States greatly over the years. Their opening move as a new nation was to storm the U.S. Embassy in Iran and take Americans hostage for 444 days. Not only was that a terrible experience for those Americans, it was an embarrassment to the United States in front of the entire world that signaled weakness to our allies and our enemies alike. We've been living down the consequences ever since. Iran is directly responsible for the deaths of thousands of Americans around the world, often in the Middle East. So that's ongoing, but we've already degraded the military capabilities of the Iranian regime such that a comeback for them, in my opinion, looks unlikely. I do believe we will see an entirely different regime in Iran soon, and a regime that is friendly to the United States rather than adversarial. So we've got Venezuela, we've got Iran, and we found out today that U.S. officials are in talks with the Cuban government. This is a nearly unprecedented kind of conversation that they have going on today. There have been protests in the streets in Cuba for the last 7 days in a row on the back of power outages, which are, at least in part, likely due to the restriction of oil coming from Venezuela to Cuba. Venezuela was the primary provider of oil to Cuba, which they use for their energy production. Well, now Venezuela is no longer part of the Axis as evil. It's at least transitioning towards a more U.S.-centric position, and so it's not going to support Cuba like it did before. Now, officials haven't really stated this outright, but I believe that what they're discussing or going to be discussing soon is actually making Cuba a U.S. territory. That's right. That's maybe sounds like pretty extreme. Maybe it sounds like a big leap to make. But, I think Donald Trump sees the necessity of controlling Cuba as a large entity within our sphere that our enemies have used directly as a threat to us over the years. And Cuba has been communist since 1959. So you've got the 1999 establishment of socialism in Venezuela, the 1979 establishment of the Iranian regime, and the 1959 establishment of communism in Cuba. That is a 67-year run that we could be putting an end to here in the next couple of days. If Donald Trump pulls through and accomplishes all these things in these three different nations and never accomplishes anything else for the rest of his presidency, he will have accomplished so much more than I think almost anyone thought possible, and certainly more than any American presidents have accomplished in my lifetime, in decades and decades and decades. We're talking about a golden era for the United States, a new era of American safety, of American supremacy, an era of American respect. I think that the esteem of the United States has been slowly moving downhill over the decades as our foreign policy decisions have not been backed up with strength, right? We've made a lot of foreign policy decisions. We've put ourselves in a lot of different situations. You can go back to the Korean War, the Vietnam War. You can look at Iraq 1. You can look at Iraq 2, Afghanistan. And what you see is a will of our nation to act, but often not a will to follow through, not a will to find a solution, a foreign policy solution that puts the United States in a good position after everything is said and done with that particular scenario. Well, Donald Trump has thrown out that playbook, and he is looking at a solution-based foreign policy that puts America first and puts Americans first, and by doing that, creates order in a way that the globe has not seen in so many decades. It's actually going to be very good for the people around the world. It's not just going to be good for Americans, because the entire world benefits when there is order. So that's really what I wanted to talk about today. I'm very excited. This doesn't mean that we have no more problems, or we don't have any other issues that we don't need to work through as a nation. We have many big issues. There's the threat of Islam, which is growing. There is abortion, which is not a threat. It is an ongoing thing that we need to address as a nation. We need to address our voting, right, and get rid of so many loopholes that allow people to vote fraudulently or illegally. And so these are big changes that we need to make, but we all need to take a step back, and we got to hand it to him. Donald Trump is doing things that many thought not possible. All right, thanks for tuning in. You have a great day.